Ground support equipment is used to service an aircraft between flights. However, these equipment require maintenance of their own, which typically gets ignored, or it cannot keep up with the pace set by the aircraft itself. This leads to Frankenstein fixes in order to get GSE to work just enough to finish the job. This is Janky GSE.
Janky GSE is a good way to explain it because, man, more often than not, that's exactly what it is. Just janky, raggedy, falling apart. As you're towing it down the line, you leave a trail of miscellaneous hardware behind it.
The trail of tears and broken dreams.
Broken dreams. You've had to find a bunch of spare wheels from the junkyard to put on it, to move it around. Right? It's got a wagon wheel from the 1800s on there.
Right. As the brakes are squeaking along to kind of get itself going, it squeaks to the tone of Green Day, like I walk a lonely road.
Yeah, I know. And Six, you know this, but one of the places we had like tow tractors that would tow luggage carts around at the airports from like the I'm going to say those are probably from the 70s, but they act like they were from the 40s. Like the chokes would stick. You'd have to, if it was cold out in the morning, you'd have to sit there and pump the gas pedal to get it going and hopefully not flood it. You'd have to mash the brake to the floor to shift it into gear because it would lurch forward or backwards, depending on if you're going forward or reverse.
Mm-hmm.
And then in tow, it would jolt the tow bar and the then multi-million-dollar attached airplane around, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, right. So for those who don't know, right, ground support equipment is the stuff you see at an airport or at a gate where like the baggage carts, like MVP said, the tow tractors that move the plane in and out of the gate to the runway and back, or like that big generator thing that's looking like it's recharging the plane, stuff like that. So these things, they're, like we've said, is meant to like service the plane in between flights when it's on the ground, stuff like that. And these things, they're machines themselves, so they require their own set of maintenance. Now, depending on who owns it or who's contracted for it, or if there's even dedicated technicians for it, the maintenance for that typically doesn't happen either by contracting, fund shortage, part shortage, or it's just because the plane itself is just such in a high demand that the support equipment can't keep up, or it's running so all the time and it doesn't have enough rest or breaks to really sit down and fix it. So then we go into these Frankenstein fixes where we get it to work just enough to get it done. In MVP's example was we're using a 1940s level baggage cart to tow a plane around, and we gotta smash the brakes just to get it to shift into gear.
Well, I like how you mentioned, if there's not an own dedicated GSE team to do the maintenance, I believe that if there's not a dedicated GSE team, that maintenance will never get done. If it's left to the AMPs, I mean, that is always going to be, GSE is always going to be on the back burner.
Right.
Because they're, especially if you're working airlines, you're going to be focused on the planes coming in and out all day, right? Because those are all revenue flights. So those planes have to get in the air. So now obviously these planes can't get in the air if the required GSE isn't working, but that just starts the waterfall effect. But I can tell you it's always going to be a back burner thought.
Right. And we mentioned this in the episode with Buns about documentation. GSE has its own set of maintenance records, and no one thinks to look through them until it's time for it to go through an overhaul, or it's going through a major inspection stuff, or if it breaks. So you look into some of these records and it'll say date last service 2001 or date last service 1991. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, that's true. Like, and a lot of the GSE has daily checkout list, right? So, or prior to use. So either one, it's the first, you do it at the first use of the day. You'll do the pre-inspection list, or in some cases, the equipment might need it prior to each and every use. But let's face it. I mean, more often than not, those are pencil whipped items anyways. And then that's how you get to like, well, how come this wasn't caught during the pre-inspection? Well, that's because somebody would have actually had to done the pre-inspection to catch
Right?
it.
Oh, I'm gonna tell you, so many times I would see people do that. Like you mentioned, like the GSC that I had to work with had a pre and post operation inspection. So every time you're gonna use it and every time you're gonna put it back, you have to do an inspection on this. And most cases, people will just look like, okay, who used it last and when was the last time it was used? Oh, it was used yesterday. All right, pencil whip. Or if it was used the same day by someone who you know and trust, like, okay, yeah, whatever, pencil whip.
Yeah, it was just used 5 hours ago. It's probably fine.
Yeah, probably. And then you find, then you be the lucky soul who snaps the throttle cable as you're towing a plane along, and you're just spinning wheels for no reason.
Oh, speaking of snap throttle cables, another example of a tug recently used on one of the projects I was on. We get out there and, you know, it's an old tug from God knows when and God knows where. It literally looks like they pulled it out of the junkyard, like out of an aircraft boneyard, and blew the dust off of it and changed the oil and said, this will be fine. You know, tires are all cracked and dry rotted, whatever. And so the throttle cable snaps. So we're sitting there waiting on the guy to show up at the tug, and we call him and it's, hey, where you at? It's been 30 minutes. It doesn't take that long to get here. And he's like, I'm trying to fix the throttle cable. It snapped again, or it snapped. And then the guy on the other end of the line goes, again? Well, it turns out this throttle cable had snapped like 6 times. And so at that one project, there's no dedicated GSE team. So it was left to the A&Ps to fix it. And as we said earlier, if it's left to the A&Ps, it's always going to be a back thought until it's necessary.
Right.
So trying to patch together, but the cable snapped and been shortened so many times that they've had to try to reroute it, but it's just so short now that it can't reach the you know, its intended gas pedal. And so they had to route it up through the transmission tunnel, and there's a piece of steel that covers the transmission tunnel and all the rotating assemblies under there. So they had to stick it up through there and then leave the cover off, so thereby exposing yourself to all the rotating assemblies, but reach in there with a pair of vice grips and then clamp the vice grips onto the end of the cable and then, you know, pull it in and out to give it gas or no gas. And you know, it just gets dangerous. But you know, you put in the request to the local program management and say, hey, you know, we need to get a replacement cable. And they say, well, what have you been doing so far? Well, just making it work. Well, keep making it work. Like, it's getting dangerous though now. And then the guy, it's cold out, so he had a pretty loose sweatshirt on, and he ended up getting his shirt caught in one of those rotating assemblies.
No.
And it didn't pull his arm all the way in, but it did shred the sleeve off of it.
Oh, lucky.
And so he walks into the program manager's office and goes, can we get one now? Why in your sweatshirt? The tug ate it. Like, it's like, thank God it wasn't my arm, but this could have been a lot worse. And
right.
To this day, talking with some of the guys who are still there, I don't think they actually got a replacement. They're just still, I think actually one of them broke down and went to O'Reilly or Napa Aviation, bought a generic throttle cable that would fit, you name it, whatever car, and made it work.
Jesus.
Again, made it work, but used their own money just to make their lives easier. You know, it's just crazy.
Oh my God. I mean, I could have pictured so many ways that could have gone south. Especially, it did get caught. For all intents and purposes, man, that could have totally fucked him up easily, you know? And, you know, like, when you hear stuff like that, I'm thinking, like, vice grips. Okay, it's kind of like those old cars where you use the vice grips to roll down the window or change the channel on your old TV set, but not to...
Oh, yeah. I've do that before. Click, 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 click. Is this a channel you wanted, Grandma? No. Go back around. Click, click, click.
Right. It's one of those where you actually have to hit the TV in order for it to work. That doesn't happen no more. You try that now, it'll freaking destroy everything.
That was back in the days when your parents had kids just so they could have somebody change the channel for them.
Right.
We were biological remotes, remote controls. Like
the Flintstones with it's not an actual remote, it's just a little box with a little pterodactyl thing to go and push the button.
Oh, yeah.
But still, man, like, that just off the wall. Like, you're using a pair of vice grips to be the gas pedal. That's wild.
While towing around an asset that cost $15 million. Like,
yeah,
come on, you know.
I mean, imagine if that was a commercial airline, right? And you're wondering why you're going so damn slow, and then finally the mechanic just has added, like, look, passengers, I'm literally driving this thing with a pair of vice grips. Not my foot, with a pair of vice grips. So please excuse us while we get you towed slowly but surely onto the runway.
I think a lot of passengers who commercial passengers would be shocked if they knew the dirty underbelly of the airline industry. You know what I mean?
Right?
Just like all that same stuff. They'd be like, "You what now? What else are you doing? How else are you fixing these things? Don't worry about it. Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to."
Like, I'm never flying again. Like, yeah, but you ride in your friend's car who who here has a friend that says things like, "I know how my car is." And
they got a hoopty.
Yeah.
Oh, the gas gauge doesn't work, but I know how much gas is left in the tank. Do you? Do you really?
Right. Or you got to do like some special shit to start it. Like, you got to press the gas and the clutch together, and you got to kind of like jump in your seat and then smash the clutch down.
Yeah. Or you always got to park it at the top of a hill so you can bump start it in the morning when you leave to go to work.
Yeah. Right. Now picture that, but it's on support equipment and or an aircraft. Same thing does happen.
Or how about a power cart that's got some sort of electrical fault? When you go to open one of the panels or touch it, it gives you a little zap every time. Not enough to do any damage, but it becomes like the joke around the flight line. Like, hey, go grab that power cart number, whatever. And then everybody starts laughing. And then the new guy walks over there and gets the shit shocked out of him.
Now, I did have something similar to that, but it didn't give the zap, but it'll have like this giant jolt of electricity for like a split second, right? So like as soon as you turn it on, it's supposed to fall into this green range, right? Like this is the normal operating.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you turn it on, this thing would spike far into the red, like, oh my God, right? But then it'll slowly, I don't know what it is, but it'll slowly tail itself back. So we instead of fixing it the right way, they'll just slap a sign on it that says, do not plug onto aircraft until it has ran for like X amount of minutes. Like,
oh, interesting.
Like, really? That's the fix? Like, can we just like take this down and say it doesn't work instead of like, just let it do its thing for 2 minutes? Especially with electricity. God forbid, like, whoever knows a thing or two about electricity is you don't fuck with this, especially when the ground is fucked up or like the regulators are fucked up, or God forbid, like the stuff that keeps it from electrifying the entire assembly is fucked up.
Maybe that's why some of the new GSE, they have warm up times, right? So it's all auto into a timer. So warm up and cool down cycle. So you go and start the equipment, but it actually won't let you bring up the RPMs and put on power until it's ran for 5 minutes. And then when you go to shut it down, it'll auto, it'll throw the breakers internally, and then it'll auto idle itself down and run at that for 3 minutes, and then it'll shut itself off.
True.
That's probably because so many people, it'll be -30 outside. Somebody will start the generator and then immediately throw it, bring up the RPM and throw power so they can power up the aircraft.
Right.
That's how things get damaged.
Probably. Now, I've seen some of these newer tow tractors where they'll have like a kill switch right by the door. It's like this big red button. And it used to be the ongoing joke. Like whenever we have some new guy on the tow tractor, he'll be towing things along, or he'll just be driving along. We'll come up right behind or right next to it and just press the red button. It kills the engine. But I think the reason why that button was there is because the older brother of these tow tractors, they would have like RPM runaway. Like after so long, the governors or whatever would fail, so it would just like over rev the fuck out of itself and like shatter itself.
Yeah, and you can't shut it down, so the motor ultimately grenades.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, what's the fix? Oh, we have like this little kill switch at the outside of it to kind of tell the engine to shut itself up. Now consequently, I may or may not have done this, but I've heard of significant stories of people who would disable these governors on purpose just to get a little extra oomph out of the tow tractors. I may or may not know of a couple individuals who have used this said disabled effect to drag race with tow tractors. Now picture the average speed of a tow tractor is anywhere between slow and 5 miles an hour. I think at best is maybe 10. And then that's with the governors on that limits the engine from doing any more than that. And they're built for 10 to 15 miles an hour. And then you turn these off or disable them for whatever reason. And now they're going 30. You see everything rattle loose.
You know what's really fun to race around is jammers. You know, they would, those little units you ride on, and it has the hydraulic arms to load bombs with and stuff.
Oh yeah, the weird forklift looking things.
Yeah, man, those things actually scoot. They move pretty quick. So again, I may or may not have seen or witnessed or partaked in several of those races where we'd set up cones in like a slalom course on the ramp, and then who can get around their time trials, and we do like team races, and oh my god, the crap you used to do, man.
Yeah. Now some of those jammers, they don't have steering wheels. They have like these weird joysticks. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So like you're trying to do a turn, like a full arc turn with a joystick that only goes left, right, up, down. So I'm like, I can't go diagonal. How do I do? It's like with those old Nintendo controllers where you're trying to do the Hadouken where it says like semicircle, like, but how do I semicircle with only 4 directions?
Yeah, how do I semicircle on a D-pad? I don't get it.
Flashback to old times, man.
Or like we had a fuel truck once that, like, there was backup pumps on it, right? But the one, something happened with the one pump, so we could only defuel with it. And then the other, so we had to, there was a certain way we had to like wire in the switches, and we had to put like P-touch labels on them where do not throw these switches in this direction, and then to defuel, throw the switches in the opposite direction. And where it should have just been one toggle switch where you just push it forward or pull it back. Mm-hmm. But something happened with the circuitry of that truck that we had to like toggle, like add in like 5 other switches to make it work. So It was like using a cheat code: up, down, right, left, B, A, B, A, to make the fuel truck work.
That's the cheat code for Contra, right? That's the
up, down, left, right, BA, start.
Yeah, that's for Contra, isn't it? Like unlimited ammo or something like that?
I believe so, yeah. That's like the most well-known.
Yeah. I knew the cheat code before I knew what it was for. Isn't that weird?
So many memes about it.
And I'm like, what is this for? Like, I'm trying it on every game that I know. Like, what is this for? And they're like, oh no, this is for like Atari first ever Nintendo version of Contra. Like, no shit. Hold on, what does it do? And even then, you still can't beat the first stage. Like, god damn it. God fucking damn it. It's like the hardest game ever. If you pass the first stage, you're like in the top 1% of all gamers everywhere.
Have you had a piece of GSE, let's say the axles, because it just gets, it might be on a pretty rough flight line, but then again, you got the guys who take the governors off the tug, so they're hauling a big GPU down the line at 60 miles an hour. You know what I mean? And then eventually, after years of that, the tiny axles that they always put on those GPUs for some reason, I don't know why they put such weak axles, but they eventually break.
Yep.
And then but the GPU is still good. So to move the GPU around, it's got like its own dedicated forklift that just it just carries the GPU up and down the line to wherever it needs to go.
Or I've seen somewhere they have like they make like this wagon for it, so it's kind of like, oh, this rear axle doesn't work, so they kind of jack it up and put this cart on it, kind of like those wheelchairs for dogs, So like they,
oh yeah.
Like, just get it to work just enough. Fuck it.
I saw once where they went to like Tractor Supply. Tractor Supply will sell like the single axle small trailers.
Yeah,
like you would haul a ATV on or something. And I've seen like the local command go, okay, well, we'll find something to replace it. Like, oh, cool, we're going to get, either a new GPU or we're going to get new axles for it, something or whatever else. And no, they come back with one of those trailers and then they're like, here, just mount it to this somehow. And tow it around. You're like, that's okay.
All right. Not as cool, but I would have a pressure washer in one of the sites I was at. That was for us to wash aircraft down because we didn't have a dedicated wash pad for it. This thing was like a 1980s generator, which they somehow rigged a water pump to and a 100-gallon water tank. The pull cord thing didn't work, so you had to like do like the old school way where you have to kind of curl the the rope in such a way and pull it real fast so it gets the crank going.
Oh yeah. I know what
So-
you're saying.
And then all the water lines and whatnot, they rotted out because of just being kept in the sun and no one covering it or do any real maintenance to it. So we had to like find a way to get like these fuel lines, these steel braided fuel lines, to somehow fit onto these water pump lines. So like we're using fuel lines for water pumps, and we had to like kind of use all these different step up, step downs so it can actually fit into the water line. And it was some of the most Frankenstein fixes. It looked way more complicated than it was supposed to be. And then when you finally get it started, since the fuel lines were bigger than the normal water lines, it will take some time for it to actually build enough head pressure to push the water through. So like for a solid 20-30 minutes, it would just be like this really sad faucet water stream of of water until about 5 minutes. Until about 5 minutes later, then it'll actually kick out enough pressure to wash planes with. It was just so ghetto rigged how we had to make this happen.
I had an old electric power washer that was that way. Like, it takes so long for some reason to build pressure, but you'd squeeze the trigger, and yeah, like you said, it's like using a super soaker, and then all of a sudden it would just boom, and then they were at 3,000 psi.
Yeah, that's exactly how it worked. Like, like I was like you said, I was using a super soaker or a squirt gun, like, and then all of a sudden, oh my god!
Yeah, so you're trying to peel grime off the aircraft, and you're standing real close to it to try to do it with the super soaker pressure. But then all of a sudden you get the good pressure to come through, and then you punch the hole through the sheet metal.
Right. Now, that's assuming that there's even GSC there to Frankenstein your way through it. Have you ever ran through a situation where there was no GSC around and you still had to get the job done?
Yeah, I've had to do that a couple times, unfortunately.
So like example for me, right? We were in this one airport site, but there was no tow tractors anywhere, or there was none that was rated for the amount of weight that we needed. But but there was like a John Deere tractor in the weeds somewhere, and let me tell you, man, every single person there turned on their inner redneck farmer John thinking cap, and we got this in the dirt, in the weeds John Deere tractor. God knows how long this thing's been fired up, and we get it working. And tell me that we didn't use this John Deere tractor to tow around planes with. It was the funniest shit ever.
Yeah, and then your command was probably like, "Oh, cool. Well, just keep using it." Then you're like, "No, this was just to make it happen. You're supposed to give us the good stuff." No,
Right.
That is the good stuff. Good for you.
Right?
Good for you for
Like,
making that work.
No, this is not. It's not even rated for this. For anyone who knows how a tractor works, right? They don't slowly pull things. It's just as soon as you crank it going and you get the clutch in, it goes whoop, it jumps forward. And for certain rated aircraft, it's not supposed to do that. And you can risk destroying the tow bar. You can risk destroying the pinions the tow bar go into, the wheels, all kinds of shit, right?
That's why the tow bars have the shear pins built in, unless of
Right.
course you get the certain individuals who weld those in place, and then
Right. Which I may or may not have seen happen.
yeah, same here.
So what sort of stuff did you have to make do with little to no GSC?
I know we had to. Well, same thing along the lines of a tow vehicle. We didn't have a tow vehicle on site, but there was a rental car place down the road.
Yeah.
So we went and rented a truck, and then fashioned a way to hook the tow bar to it,
Mm-hmm.
and use that to tow it around. We had to, with one of the GPUs, I know we had to use we had to go to Home Depot and buy a bunch of circuit breakers to make the, like, it was one of those GPUs laying off in the dirt, and we needed something, but it was missing half the components out. Like, it had already been ravaged, and all the good stuff taken out of it. So I know we went and got like a bunch of stuff at Home Depot to make it work, and it did work for a while, but ultimately it just killed itself.
Now, I think I've mentioned this in another episode. I think we're using the wrong GSC for the job. So, like we were talking, like for instance, the John Deere tractor. It works, but it's not meant for it. And then there's another instance where we're removing and installing aircraft propellers with a forklift. I mean, do whatever it takes still, but I mean, picture that, like having to use a forklift to put on a propeller blade. Like, first of all, the forklift needs to be tall enough to raise it up or down, and then you got to rig it in such a way where the weight of the propeller doesn't tilt itself forward and fall off the forks or onto the forks, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Here's another instance. Or using a aircraft jack that's not really rated for the weight of that specific airframe.
Yeah.
Like, well, and then people are like, well, I mean, the aircraft's only 10,000 pounds more than what this jack's rated for, but they always over engineer it and then undersell what it can actually do. So, and you're like, well, okay, but what if it gives out? I mean, the manufacturer's not going to come back and say, oh yeah, you're right, sorry. They're going to say, well, we told you so. Or how about with a hydraulic jack that's got a pretty severe leak?
Oh my God.
So as it's up on stands, you got one guy dedicated to just watching the level because it's constantly bleeding down, and he's just standing there with a 5-gallon bucket of hydraulic fluid, pouring it back in, and has to keep pumping it back up.
Yeah.
Pump it back up, pour it in, pump it back up, pour it in. And everybody else is scrambling as fast as they can just so they can get it back off stands.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I have seen instances like that, which is sad to say. And that's pretty terrifying. You think about it, because it actually happened to us in totally different scenarios.
I think it's happened to almost everybody. I bet almost every one of our listeners out there has gone through that, because I mean, those Tron Air jacks leak quite a bit, especially with enough use and age.
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, I bet almost every one of our listeners has gone through something like that. It's wild. What about you, Shoreline? What about some janky GSE in the sound industry?
I think I've gone into some of that in a previous episode. I mean, when we're having to lift something with something that's maybe a little underrated for what the job can be, like for instance that story I told with that motor versus the pull chain. Mm-hmm. That story really rings true to me right now. Trying to think of any others, and I mean, we have to do some pretty improvised like cable fixes and stuff like that. Having to, if we have to turn a 4-conductor cable into an 8-conductor cable, we just have to tear apart the 2 4-conductor cables and turn it into an 8. That kind of thing.
Or what about using a $500 van to haul around $150,000 of
oh man,
music sound equipment?
That rings true. There is a famous truck in my shop that has been there for forever, and I can't tell you how many times this truck has broke down on me alone. I mean, it was deemed illegal to be on the road at one point. Literally. It was bad. and we found a way to get it limping and get it fixed. But I mean, yeah, like you said, it's hauling around all this equipment that's worth 4 to 10 times more than the truck itself, Yeah. I mean, now, like that the transmission in that truck just went out on somebody and then we got that fixed, and then the axle broke, so then it had to get towed with another truck back to the shop.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's constant, man. Constant.
That's freaking sad. No, I can't recall, Shoreline, did you mention that you had to step up gauges on wires before?
Less step up gauges necessarily, but like, so some speakers have 4-conductor, 1 positive, negative, 2 positive, negative. And then some speakers run off of 8-conductor. So there's a difference in NL4 and NL8. The NL8 is 1 positive, negative, 2 positive, negative, 3 positive, negative, 4 positive, negative. So what I've seen had to happen is, well, we're in a pinch and we need to turn this 4-conductor cable into an 8-conductor cable. So we just put 2 4-conductors together to create the 8-conductor. And obviously that's not the ideal situation, but in a pinch, it's the show's got to go on. That's
Right.
in my industry, similar to some of the things that you guys have talked about. The flight has to happen. It's there is no alternative in my industry. The alternative costs millions of dollars, and you can't, like, if a show doesn't happen because of the production company, that's a real bad look. And I've never been in a situation where that has happened. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. So you just got to make it work.
Yeah. Well, same. Yeah. You pretty much hit the nail on the head. It was the same way with us. Like, we run into the scenarios like, well, what's more important, the flight taking off on time or the flight landing on time, right? And most people, generally, most people in operation would say, oh, we want the flight to take off on time. Takeoff is better than landing. It's like, yeah, but you got to kind of think of it from the customer perspective. If they're in a connecting flight, they would much rather be landing on time so they can make the connecting flight than taking off on time and then having issues and having to land again because of problem X. Which half the time it's caused by the ground support equipment because either it didn't service it right, it's not pushing enough juice to get the aircraft where it needs to be, like say for instance electricity or hydraulic.
Oh my God, that's the hydraulic mules. Holy cow! How many of those have you seen?
Oh my God,
Patchworked and pieced together and barely operational.
Only all the time. Like I remember a time we had like 8 hydraulic mules in a given time, and all 8 shot themselves, just grenaded themselves for whatever reason, either blown lines, blown regulators, blown baffles, or they somehow or whatever, they're not putting off enough pressure, they're putting too much pressure, stuff like that. I'm just like, holy shit, man. Like,
I remember we had this hydraulic mule and it was wired it was like 3-phase something or other, but the hanger didn't have that in it. It was an old hanger.
Yeah.
And so the boss was like, well, just, try to make it work, see if it works. Like, it doesn't seem like a safe thing to do. He's like, just try to make it work. Okay. So we do all the jerry rigging we have to do. And then we go to plug it in and go to throw the switch on, the power switch on, and just boom right away. I'm like, what the hell was that? And then we hit the kill switch, pop off the panels. And then, like, how they have those massive capacitors in there and like the old mules.
Yeah.
They look like they're like the size of a Nalgene water bottle.
Yeah.
And we looked at it, and that thing had grenaded inside. That was what the boom was. We're like, well, that didn't work. Get the red tag, tie it on there. Do not use.
No, I've seen ones where the mules, they'll kick off so much pressure just before they grenade themselves, and it'll just turn into like this mini waterfall or a water fountain of hydraulic fluid. Just like, oh, there it is.
Yep. Blew a line out, blew a seal out, something, one of the couplings. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, I guess that one's done.
Yep. That's a wrap for that one. Next. And then you look at it like, do we have another one? Nope. Fuck.
Damn it. I guess we got to fix one.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Now, off topic, since we're going about hydraulic fluid, there's this one prank we used to play on infantry guys. This was on a CH-46 helicopter, the frog banana shaped looking one, however you want to describe it. Anyway, there's a hydraulic pump handle that looks like the shape of a cane by the tail ramp, and you would pump this up to build pressure for the hydraulic auxiliary power unit to kick on. And once it's in the air, that pump and the pump handle basically become useless. Like, they do nothing. So the prank is we'll have infantry guys in the cargo bay as this thing's flying along, and the crew chief has a direct connect headset to the pilot, and it's like, hey, we're gonna mess around with one of these infantry guys. So they'll pick one random guy and they'll say, hey man, we need you to pump this hydraulic pump to keep the aircraft in the air. They're like, okay. And then they'll signal to the pilot, like, dude, just dip down real fast, like a really hard dip. I'm like, oh my God, pump the handle, pump the handle. So here's the guy, like, this infantry dude, like, just like frantically pumping the handle, like, oh my God, we're all gonna die. And then they'll slowly come back up, and then it's like, keep pumping, dude, keep pumping. And then he starts getting tired, obviously, because he can't keep
can't maintain that pace.
Yeah. So like he'll get tired, lose his pace, and I'm like, all right, dip down. Oh my God, keep pumping. Ah! And they'll do this for a solid 2 to 3 hours, however long the flight is. So this dude is like shitting bricks the entire time, just trying to like really keep hydraulic pressure up. This
2 to 3 hours. Oh my God.
This quote unquote hydraulic pressure.
Oh my
and then
God.
and as soon as they land, like, oh thank God, dude, you saved our lives and shit. And so he thinks that he's the hero of the world, and he's like bragging to all his friends. And then all the air crews are sitting there laughing, like, we really just made this dude pump a useless handle for 3 straight hours.
That's awesome. Oh my God. 3 hours. That's horrendous. I couldn't imagine doing that for 3 hours.
Yeah. And he's doing nothing. Like it's useless. Once the aircraft's in the air, it does nothing. You're literally you're pumping a dead handle. Like one of those water pumps that's not even connected. Just like just doing shit for no reason.
Oh my gosh.
Any listeners out there who've done some stuff like that, like with the CH-46, 47, or anything that has that kind of handle, please share your stories with us and how you messed around with the non-familiar.
Yeah, and share your own GSE stories. I'm sure we only touched on a few subjects today, but hit us with some of the stuff you guys have gone through. Share your stories. We'd like to hear them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Real quick, I actually just got reminded of a story, and I was thinking about it. But there was one situation where we were more than one situation where this has happened. Not necessarily this badly, but we overloaded a 16-foot truck, and we overloaded it so much that one of our guys was going down the road, and the back tires popped off while he was going down the freeway.
Oh my God.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he was known as the truck breaker from then on, but because that was not the only truck that broke down on him. He stopped.
Oh, man.
Yeah, man, that was a rough one.
That would be like he gets out of the truck and be like, guys, something weird happened. Somebody shit my pants. I don't know.
Oh my
who
God,
it was,
no kidding.
but that just happened.
So has anything like that happened to you guys where like it has officially been overloaded and it's just gone?
Yeah.
No, I've been close though, where it was overloaded and we hit, like we had an engine in the back of like one of those Nissan DV200 vans, the really small little windowless panel vans. And we had a $10 million engine in the back of it. And we hit a bump going down the freeway at like 70 miles an hour, and we lost all of our hubcaps. So that's as close as we got.
I've seen an aircraft where it wasn't overloaded, but it was like right at its max load, and this was flying into the wind, where things are generally a little bit more choppy when you do that. So it was actually a helicopter, no less, probably scary as it is. So this thing needed to actually have a running start just to build enough lift to get its max weight off the ground. It didn't look shady to begin with. Like it's at the very end of the runway. It's building momentum to get enough lift. And right where the runway ends, there's this steep drop. Go figure. And so we're seeing this thing going, and hits the end of the runway, and then it drops. I'm like, oh my God, they died. And then you just see it come right back up, like, oh, thank God.
Oh my gosh. That would be scary.
Right? Like, ooh.
I know like some of the bush pilots talk about them overloading the planes, and like they'll get up on like the bush planes that have those big balloon tires, so they'll get up on like top of a mountain, and when they go to take off, they'll have to do the same thing. They'll shoot straight off the edge of the cliff and just dive in order to build enough speed to then try to climb up out, because they wouldn't be able to do it otherwise.
I think I've seen videos of that where like this should not have taken off kind of thing, and then just drops like a steep drop, like, oh my God, they died, like, and he comes right back up.
They'll dip below the clouds, and you're like, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden you'll see him pop up further out, back out of the clouds. You're like, oh man.
Ooh. oh my God.
Like, I'm glad I wasn't on that plane.
Right? Yeah, I can imagine that. Like, no, this is normal, completely normal, supposed to happen. Jesus, Nick, no. Oh man, I had an analogy for your story, Shoreline, and I just totally lost it. I could imagine how that guy felt as he's just going along, and all of a sudden, do oh, what the hell?
And this the most god awful scraping sound you've ever heard.
Right? Oh no. He's cursed, man. That guy's cursed.
I couldn't imagine that. Can you imagine though, like you're the guy going on the road after him, and
Right.
he's known as the truck breaker? Like, oh, I just used that truck yesterday. You should be fine. You're like, will I be though? Will I be okay?
Or imagine doing a handoff with him, like you guys are doing like a cross country leg, and he's the last one to drive the truck. All right, here you go, friend. Like, oh shit. What did you do? Closing thoughts, MVP.
Well, we've all had to deal with some janky GSE, and we've all had to make it work. And kudos to those who have gone above and beyond to make it work. Kudos to the GSE team for fixing the used and abused pieces of equipment that all the rest of us pretty much run ragged every day. So we appreciate you guys for keeping that going, to keep us doing our jobs and everything else going. Because like I said, if it wasn't for you guys and it was left to the A&Ps to fix it, it's not going to get done until it absolutely has to. And then at that point, it's just duct taping it together enough to make it work one time.
Right. Yeah. Kudos to all your GC team guys. Like, you're probably the underappreciated out of anyone who's in the aircraft maintenance field, other than the mechs themselves and the documentation administrators, stuff like that. We like to thank our patrons for helping us produce this show, continue making episodes, and have Shoreline ever happy to produce it for us. Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Stephanie Boatman, Jenny Dignan, Ryan Frushauer, Daniel Schubert, and Steven Shivers. Thank you guys so much for all your patronage, and thank all our patrons for supporting us and helping us produce these episodes for you. Visit our website at cancelformaintenance.com. If you have any ideas for the show, stories, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, hit us up on the contact us section. Shoot us your ideas, your stories, and then we'll try to get those or yourself onto the show. Visit our sponsor at rockwelltime.com. They make things like outdoor equipment, snowboard equipment, watches, sunglasses, you name it. Use the code CX4MX, save 10% off your purchase. And then once again, support us on Patreon. If you like this show, your patronage allows us to continue making episodes, bring on guests, and you get special exclusive perks for being patrons, such as Discord access, discounted merch once we get our shop going, and then more bonus behind the scenes content of the show itself. Also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and now Twitter and YouTube, actually.
Ooh, the YouTubes now.
Ooh, the U of the tubes. Right. Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at Kanks for Maintenance Podcast, Twitter and YouTube at CXMX Podcast. Follow us there, get more updates about us, about the show. And if you have any ideas, also shoot at us that way. Please leave us a review on those listening platforms of your choice. Tell us what you think of the show. Any news is good news.
Share your thoughts and stories. We'd like to hear them. Maybe we'll do another episode. We haven't done a read through one day where, like we did in the past, people send us the stories and we just kind of read and discuss them. We haven't done one of those episodes in a while. That'd be kind of fun to do an episode like that again. So share us your janky GSE stories. Maybe we'll do another episode.
Absolutely. Maybe, and if you haven't, send us your questions too. We can probably do those read through questions like MVP said. Until then, thank you, everybody.
Have a great day. Thanks.